welcome to the Earth Feels podcast.
I'm Rose.
And I'm Christine.
Welcome to Earth Feels, the podcast for people feeling overwhelmed by the endlessly gloomy climate news.
Where every week we have soul-based conversations about climate change and explore the idea that climate change may be happening for us as much as it is happening to us.
If you are ready to shift your focus and secure the future for our kids and our grandkids, then this is the podcast for you.
And yes, we do know how to spell.
So today's topic is, will climate catastrophe be the legacy we leave for our kids?
Well, right now it seems to be.
And it's a pretty heavy subject that we would leave this where we are right now for our kids. And they are already taking the lead, which is a little disconcerting. I'm glad they are, but it's a little disconcerting to see that we adults are not showing the way. We are leaving it for them.
I think that parents and grandparents feel helpless a lot of the time, and that there isn't anything that they can do. And I think what Greta Thunberg and other
Young
climate activists who have really come to the forefront in the last year or two are just saying it doesn't matter, that like hopelessness is not an option.
No,
that we have to act.
It's not an option. I mean, I am encouraged by what's by the call from private citizens actually to have a climate debate here in the U.S. with the Democratic contenders. Initially, the Democratic National Convention said they did not want to have a climate debate, and they wanted it just to be a regular topic. But it seems like it's the overwhelming topic that we need to be speaking about, because it affects everything. It affects our economic injustice. It affects jobs. It affects housing. It affects everything. And CNN just this past week has announced that they are going to host a debate for the 20-something Democrats. So that was a bit of good news. I don't know if it's been sanctioned by the DNC yet. And the DNC was actually going to put it up for a vote and yada, 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 all this red tape kind of stuff. But I mean, just get off your butt and do it, because we need to hear what these potential candidates are going to do for us or lead us, the direction that they're going to lead us in.
And it definitely needs to be more than just a little, soundbite or 2 minutes out of a regular debate, which unfortunately that tends to be what's been happening in Canadian politics as well as American politics. And I do think that the Fridays for the Future movement, which is what Greta has started with her, one person outside of the Swedish legislature, back last August, I think, with her sign about climate change, protesting or wanting action. So I guess the moral of that story is never let it be said that one person can't make a difference. I mean, it's one person galvanizing other people.
Yeah, she's a pretty amazing young woman. And I think just her being in the forefront has made a lot of people step up to the plate. So one other bit of good news for this week is that 7,000 colleges and universities have declared a climate emergency with a plan to fight it. So they've committed to going carbon neutral by 2030. That's the goal.
Wow.
With 2050 as kind of the outside, but their goal is 2030. And to use their resources for action-oriented research. So all those think tanks really working toward some solutions. And then the really big thing in my mind is they're going to deliver environmental and sustainability education, which it's been very controversial here in the States. They've taken down any talk of climate change on the EPA's website, yada, yada, yada. Like, bury your head in the sand and it doesn't exist. And here are these 7 universities and colleges that have said, no, we need to be educating the public about what's going on and about how to be more sustainable.
So the conversation is starting, or continuing actually.
And are these all American universities?
No, they're around the world. 7,000 universities around the world.
So that is good news. And when you think about the
Divestment.
movement to in South Africa over apartheid, it had to do with withdrawing funds from the system that was supporting apartheid. And so I guess the colleges, this isn't a divestment announcement that they've made.
No, it's not a divestment announcement. Although there was another bit in the news this week about some retirement funds, $1.3 billion that they're going to divest from fossil fuels.
Wow.
So that was another bit of good news.
Yeah, let's put that link up as well, because
Okay.
I haven't heard that. As you know, I've been out canoeing in the wilderness for the last 7 days, so I'm pretty unplugged. So you'll have to
Nice.
keep me and the listeners, get us up to date.
Well, I'd be glad to do that. So yeah, it seems like you say the conversation is continuing, and I like that, but I have not felt that it has really even started, because I don't see people talking about what's going on. Although in the last few weeks, it's become much more ramped up here in the United States. Or maybe that's just my news feed.
So is that because of weather events, or why has it been in the news?
Well, it may be because of weather events. I mean, if you think about what's going on in Europe right now, it's they've had 2 weeks where Paris has broken 108 degrees. Certainly, there's been a huge weather surge all across the United States. We had here on Cape Cod, which is normally pretty mild. Last weekend, it was over 100 degrees.
It was over 105 degrees. So for people outside of the U.S., 105 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, is maybe over 35 degrees Celsius, something like that.
Yeah. So really crazy weather. And then I think that the Midwest here is still flooded.
Wow.
Along the Mississippi. So there's been talk in the news about the farmers and all the grains that they lost, and their planting season is so much later. In some places, they haven't been able to plant at all. So I think all those kinds of things are making people kind of wake up and go, this is real. This is happening. It's not 10 years from now. It's not 20 years from now. There's so much talk about being being emissions neutral by 2050, but that's a long way in advance.
And we've got 10 or 11 years left to be well down that path. So, 2050 is too far off. That's not a goal that's going to produce a livable future for our kids and grandkids, which is what we're talking about now. And I understand what you're saying, that the conversation doesn't feel like it's continuing. I think that, again, because it was 10 years ago that I was door knocking my little private climate change canvassing, and people were concerned then. Not everybody. At least half of the people I talked to were really concerned then. It's really been this weird, and we've talked about this before already, this weird kind of cone of silence over, don't mention climate change. It's like that old joke from Faulty Towers, don't mention the war. It's produced, it just is this weird socially sanctioned unspoken rule that we haven't been comfortable talking about climate change. And because it makes people uncomfortable, it makes parents and grandparents feel uncomfortable that they can't protect their children because it's this complicated, sort of ball of wax that, well, if I don't think about it, and I know I was a climate change, not denier, but avoider for years because it made me feel so helpless. I knew it was such bad news for my daughters and I couldn't do anything about it. It didn't feel like I could do anything about it until I did. Just it's so much about facing what our worst fears are, and other people. There might be other fears that are keeping them from sort of living their best life. But for me, it was really being so worried about the future for my kids and any grandkids I might have. You and I aren't grandparents yet, but it's easier not to. And honestly, there's so many distractions, right? And plus, people are working hard to put food on the table and a bit of money aside for a vacation and for their kids' college fund. It's hard to kind of think, well, if they don't have a livable climate, it won't really matter that our house is paid off or, they've got a good college education. That's not going to help them. But
True.
it's a different mindset.
True. I think we just all need to be thinking about it. I think it needs to be in the forefront of all of our minds when we're doing whatever we're doing. I mean, preparing food in the kitchen and you see how much plastic you are working with. Everything comes packaged. And can you go to the butcher instead of going to the meat case and picking up something that's wrapped in styrofoam and plastic? Can you go to the butcher shop and have it wrapped in paper instead? I think all those little things, if everybody did little things, it goes back to, we don't need to have everybody doing everything perfectly towards sustainability, but we do need to have everybody taking at least imperfect action towards sustainability because those little things do add up.
Mm-hmm. And I would also say, though, that let's not forget that it's the big fossil fuel companies that have got us into this predicament. Yes,
Absolutely.
we're all part of the system, but they have put profit and greed above a safe future for our children. And so while we're all part of that system and most of us drive cars that use fossil fuels and because that's the only option, that's maybe the only affordable option, the fact that we don't have a choice has been determined by companies that wield a lot of power because of all of the money that they've made from the system the way it is. So I do think that taking individual action, being concerned about it, talking about it, all of that is important, but I really feel like it's important to emphasize it is actually the system. And that is what has to change.
Absolutely. I'm in total agreement with that. And yet, I believe the system does not change unless the change is going to have to come from the bottom up instead of the top down. There's no desire to change. Why should they? Until we change our consumption habits, or maybe it's a combination of both, but we need to change our consumption habits. Because once we decide, I'm not using styrofoam anymore, if enough of us decide that, there will be a tipping point where styrofoam is not used anymore.
Yes. Yep. I don't disagree. I just think that we can't lose sight of the fact that it is a system issue and that each of us, and at the same time, taking individual action that resonates with you, like not using styrofoam or, getting meat in paper instead of styrofoam. Are steps that we all can take, bringing our own bags to the grocery store, like all of those things, growing a garden. We have a big garden that but I'm not the gardener. I happen to be married to a gardener.
Nice.
So it's not an action I would be taking on my own. So it's doing those individual actions, but not losing sight of the fact that it is the system. And I had a thought, oh, I know what it is. I'm on this email group for the Climate Fast organization, which you may or may not be familiar with, but in Canada, in Toronto, they're fairly active in Toronto. And so I'm on their mailing list. And one of the emails that I got recently was just pointing out that they have signs, which I will put up on our website. I'm not quite sure where, but we'll talk about it in a later podcast maybe. But it says, I care about climate and I vote.
Nice. Yeah. Nice.
So you care about climate, you talk about climate, and you let people know, you let people that are running for office know you care about climate, and then you vote. And maybe you do what the Extinction Rebellion people are doing over in England. Some people are moved to, lay down in front of bridges, or I wasn't following the protest that close. Yeah, it was a couple of weeks ago, but they really, wow, did they talk about, they make climate change a topic of conversation in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So some people are called to do that. And maybe that's something we'll have to talk to somebody from the Extinction Rebellion movement because they are saying, no, climate catastrophe is not the legacy that we want to leave for our kids and grandchildren or for future generations. And as a result, we are doing these legal, nonviolent civil disobedience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So where is Extinction Rebellion happening? Is it only in the UK?
I know people in Canada who are involved in it. So
civil disobedience happening in Canada.
So I think it starts by getting organized and in touch with other people who feel that way. And that's my understanding of what is happening at this level in Canada. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the catalyst for what happened in the UK. It was Donald Trump's visit. I don't remember, but there was a specific reason why they chose to be that disruptive. Or maybe it's just because it was in downtown London and there's so many tourists that it's very disruptive to block streets down there. I'm not sure, but it's going to take everything. It's going to take that kind of action. It's going to take a political action. It's going to take growing your own gardens. It's going to take connecting with your neighbors. It's all of the above, which is why I think that we talk about climate change maybe happening for us as much as it's happening to us, because it will transform society. And that's why there's so much pushback. At some level, the people that are invested literally in the status quo, the people that it's working really well for, mostly wealthy white males, mm-hmm. not exclusively, but mostly, because that's the system that we have has worked the best for, the patriarchy works the best for those folks. And that's why they're resisting. They see that their end is coming.
Yeah, it's climate change, but it's paradigm change. It's going to require all of us to live in a different manner. And that's not to discount what got us here. I mean, I do believe that if you look at history, the Industrial Revolution, we needed certain things to happen in the order that they're happening, but that they have happened. But now is the time that we need to change where we are in the future direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fossil fuels have got us to the point where you and I can meet up in a few months and hopefully do some in-person sessions. It's got us to the point where we're flourishing in a lot of ways around the world. But now we're up against the wall that we have predicted 150 years ago. And the fact that we collectively can't admit it yet, is, to me, it's a sign of how big this shift is that's coming. And we don't know. We don't know. Are we going to do it? I don't know. I don't know. Can we do it? Humans are pretty ingenious and creative when our backs are up against the wall, and they're almost up against the wall, but a lot of us don't realize it yet. And unfortunately, it's harder to do it once things really destabilize, but maybe it isn't either. We've never gone through this. We weren't there when Rome fell, Rose, as far as we know.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so this is the equivalent, but on a global scale. Rome is falling, burning, as it were.
Yeah, the planet is on fire, and some of us don't even want to pull out the fire extinguishers. So, exactly.
Yeah, we want to pretend that the science of fire doesn't apply to us. So.
Well, so I think it's important to think about an action step to unfreeze you. That's part of our regular stick here. And we've got a couple of big dates coming up in September. September 20th is a call from Greta Thunberg and her Fridays for the Future to strike for climate. And she's asking people globally, adults, this is your time to step up and support what the kids have been doing, and tell your boss you won't be in from work that day. Take September 20th, I believe it's a Friday, take that day off and make a statement that if we shut down industry, the world as we know it, the workforce as we know it right now, the world will come to a screeching halt if people don't show up at work that day. And is that enough to get our politicians interested in legislating what we need to have legislated? Is that enough to have ExxonMobil? Nobody drives their car that day. Nobody buys gas that day. Make a statement, because our future depends on it. Our kids' future depends on it. Maybe our future doesn't depend on it. I don't know if I'll still be around in 2050. I'd be 92. Maybe I will, but certainly the future of our kids and our grandkids depends on it. And so I would say, make a commitment to show how serious you are about the changes that need to be done, and talk to everyone you know about it.
So that's September 20th, and we will put this action step up on our website, and also with a link. I'm assuming there's a web page or something where people can go to get more information. So,
there is a great website, and there is links that, for banners, for social media. If you want to spread it on social media, if you want to send emails, there's templates and all that kind of stuff to your friends.
Great. All right, so we will put that up on the website, that link, that information. And what is our sanity tip for today is, I would just suggest that we narrow our focus at the same time that we're thinking about climate change, but also think about the way we treat Mother Earth is reflected also in the way we treat our bodies. Or maybe I should say the way we treat our bodies is reflected in the way that we treat Mother Earth. And how about we take some special care looking after our bodies this week and continuing, if you like. But my challenge to you is to make sure that you eat a lot of nice green leafy vegetables that feed your body and your soul, and hopefully from a farmer's market, or maybe from a garden, yours or a neighbor's or a relative, grown without petrochemicals and wrapping.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye. That's this week's episode of Earth Feels. Special thanks to singer-songwriter Kristen Hoffman for generously allowing us to use Song for the Ocean. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play so you don't miss an episode. Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Children of the earth, I'm calling out. There's there's a mission for you and for me. You see, your mother, she has been suffering, and the truth is told beneath the sea.